How France secretly exploits Africa. What does the term Françafrique mean? Does France really have a hold on Africa? In what ways do they control Africa? Let's check it out in this video. Welcome back to Geopolitics and Money. In today's video, we will be seeing how France secretly exploits Africa. Before getting into the video, subscribe to our channel for more such videos. Also tap the bell icon for notification. Françafrique, which is simply France in Africa combined into one word, alludes to the strong, indivisible symbiosis between France and its former empire in Africa. It is prevalent in areas of military cooperation as well as political and economic patronage. The philosophy, which was imperceptible to the human eye, allowed the French to keep control of Africa for decades, impacting its former colonies right down to their core. French and British colonies had very different experiences as African colonies proclaimed political independence and rebelled against their European overlords. Many British colonies did so violently, severing their ties to London. The majority of French colonies, on the other hand, did so peacefully while maintaining close ties to Paris. The agreement ensured that France's influence over Africa would continue after the continent gained formal independence. Even worse, the 14 African governments had to borrow money from the French at set commercial interest rates in order to access their own resources. As a result of their reserves being held in the name of France, CFA franc members were unable to acquire credit during the 2008 financial crisis. As a result, the CFA franc, which means French Colonies of Africa, was created by de Gaulle's administration. The agreement provided a strong and stable currency to the 14 newly independent French colonies in Africa, but it also legally required them to transfer 50% of their foreign exchange reserves to the French Treasury and an additional 20% for financial obligations. In other words, the franc monetary zone's member nations only had access to 30% of the currency, which was issued under the direction of the French National Bank. It has continued to have an influence on the new countries since the French colonies in Africa earned their independence in 1959. In a post-colonial world, this was crucial to then-President Charles de Gaulle's vision of France as a powerhouse and a deterrent to British and American supremacy. During the Cold War, the United States supported France's prolonged presence in Africa to prevent the Soviet Union from colonizing the continent. Strong institutional, semi-institutional, and unofficial political, economic, military, and cultural ties were still present between France and its former colonies in Africa. World War II, the conflicts in Indochina and Algeria, as well as Charles de Gaulle's re-election as president in 1958, had already done significant damage to France. Napoleon later went on to offer independence to France's remaining colonies in sub-Saharan Africa in 1960 in order to maintain close cultural and economic ties and avert any expensive colonial warfare. Compared to French Indochina and Algeria, decolonization in sub-Saharan Africa was mostly peaceful. In a post-colonial world, de Gaulle was nevertheless dedicated to protecting France's status as a powerhouse and a rival to British and American domination. Even if African leaders wanted to be honest, they would not be able to do so since they are often corrupt and not acting in the best interests of their people. How is this even possible? After World War II, the Colonial Pact kept France in charge of the economies of the African states, gave it possession of their foreign currency reserves, gave it control over the country's strategic raw materials, stationed troops there with the right of free passage, demanded that all military hardware be purchased from France, took control of the training of the African police and army, and demanded that French businesses be permitted to maintain monopsony contracts. In addition to imposing restrictions on the importation of a variety of goods from outside the franc zone, France also established minimum import volumes. These agreements are still effective and functional. France's strategic interests in Africa have been managed for the past 50 years by the strong and clandestine African Cell, which answers only to the French president. A strategy of dependency would have apparent negative effects on the African nations, including dependence on the French military, economy, and open-door policy for French commercial industry. France has the first right of refusal to purchase any natural resources discovered on the territory of its former colonies. African countries are also not free to seek other partners since French interests and enterprises are given precedence in public procurement. France has the only right to offer military equipment and training to African militaries, as well as to deploy soldiers and intervene in African countries to safeguard France's interests. Moreover, France's former colonies are required to utilize the colonial currency FCFA and to submit an annual balance report to France. Nevertheless, they are obligated to ally with France only in times of war or catastrophe. France has retained a disproportionate influence over its former African colonies during the last 60 years. While being headed by successive presidents over the last 6 decades, France's policy on Africa has remained true to its neo-colonial foundations, pining for the lost empire. France has protected its interests in Africa through economic power, clandestine action, and a slew of military adventures. France has engaged in sub-Saharan Africa 5 times in recent years, in addition to intelligence and surveillance activities and a plethora of semi-permanent military deployments. France has started Operation Barkhane, an ongoing counterterrorism program covering 5 African Sahel countries and involving over 3,000 people. As a result, it appears that France's military engagement in Africa will continue. France understands its national interests in Africa as well as the dangers to connectivity and the supply chain, particularly airports and ports whose control assures the continuous movement of commodities, military equipment, and soldiers between France and its former colonies. It is up to France to determine whether to preserve a government, as it did in Sudan in 2008, Chad in 2008, and the Central African Republic in 2012. Additionally, France strongly advocated for military action in Libya against Muammar Gaddafi. The goal was to derail Gaddafi's ambition to establish a gold-backed African currency that would supersede France as the dominating force in Francophone Africa. Gaddafi's gold and silver holdings were projected to be 143 tons of gold and an equivalent quantity of silver, which would be more than enough to represent a significant threat to the CFA French franc. The signing of a new cooperation agreement to replace the 1973 accord was announced by French President Emmanuel Macron and Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara on December 21, 2019. The West African CFA franc was replaced by the ECO, the official currency of the Economic Community of West African States, as a result of this agreement. This will only apply to West African Economic and Monetary Union members Benin, Burkina Faso, Guinea-Bissau, Ivory Coast, Mali, Niger, Senegal, and Togo. Not Cameroon, the Central African Republic, Chad, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, and the Republic of the Congo. With that, we come to a close. What is your opinion on the same? Which of them do you think is right? Comment your thoughts in the space given below. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more information. Watch other videos from our playlist too. Bye!